was doing before.
Yeah.
Once the call's in, it'll have like, if you want to minimize it while you're going through, it'll still be on the.
Okay.
Yeah. But everything's projected, like the computer's projected on the screens right there, so don't worry about like putting anything, like any settings or anything. It's all up there.
Because we know what the analog is.
Right.
Okay, I'm back. I disconnected somehow.
No, we figured that.
Yep.
Rachel. Nice to meet you.
Well, it's not. I mean, if the video doesn't work, Faye, that's okay, as long as you can hear us. You can see the room, basically, right?
I can see you in the room, and does that, what you're talking about, is it start my video at the bottom?
What's that?
There's an option at the bottom that you might see, like next to like, it's got like the end call button and then a microphone and then the video. And you might,
Yes.
I don't know if you have it turned off because there's an option to turn off the video. If you have that clicked, then maybe that's what's happening, but if not, maybe it's just the camera. If you have a camera on the computer, it's not.
Yeah, because I just turned on the video, but it must be in my PC. I need to have them come down.
Because she's using the Skype for Business, which is that what you're using?
Yes, yes. It might be in your settings in your computer. I'm not sure what computer you have, but in your settings, you might have it turned off because some people don't like to have the option for their camera to automatically turn on because they don't want people watching them. So
is there a function you
I don't think it's in the. I think it's in your computer settings, not in the Skype. But I'm not positive if that's the case.
Under tools and preferences, right there. You're moving over to it.
Where was it?
Tools,
Oh, tools.
options, and you'll have one on the left because it says video and so you're able to choose what you want to do.
Oh,
So-
maybe that's why. Maybe that's why she has selected people in my contacts only because she probably doesn't have this Skype account in her contacts because it's the ASU.
Oh. So Faye,
Yes?
there's across the top of the Skype, you should see Skype contacts, conversation, call, view, tools, and then help.
Oh, let me see. On the left, I see participants, conversation, and at the top, I see 2 participants and a sound counter.
No.
Well, at least on what we're seeing on the screen, there's a tools section that you can click on, and then when you click on that, it has video settings as an internal one on the left-hand side. And there's some things you can do about your profile that may change how your camera's working. Alexandra's here. You can see her. They can see you.
Oh, you can see that.
Sort of like God. She's here. Did you get lunch?
I did.
Okay. What happened?
Lots of
Really?
But there's no elevator.
Hey, Andrew, can you come down and help me with Skype so I can be seen in the conference?
Sorry, I went into it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, you have to just swipe it.
goodbye.
Okay, so my IT guy is coming down. We'll get this worked out.
Should we? You want to just call back, or you want to stay on?
I'll stay on until he sees what I need to do, and then I'll do whatever needs to be done.
Because people are probably going to kind of drift in over the next 30 minutes. Yeah.
Is it start at 12:30?
No, it's supposed to be 12.
It starts
Oh.
at noon,
Yeah.
But-
but we've been behind with the
Right.
schedule.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to get you cheated on.
No. You're fine. I think lunch is till 1, so it's not a big deal.
There's still a long line over there. so-
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm going to guess that, especially if people are going to like carry it up here.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah. Well, and on the other hand, this is about the size of the crowd I expected, so.
There's about 29 on Slack who said that they would attend,
Okay.
or, on the schedule.
Ah,
So it's, no, go get lunch.
Nothing more. Besides the drama buffet, what's happening? It's just too exciting. Do you have to be someplace else? Or
No, you're fine. No, this is fine.
Hey,
Actually, wanna?
they can't actually see me.
Okay, camera's over there.
Yeah,
I think all of the sessions
But
are
we're not
but is
live.
it now?
recorded. I don't think so. I think it starts.
You want me to get out of your way?
Can't connect to the camera?
You think it's turned off in my settings on on my end?
He has it set for what.
Shouldn't be.
Getting to start. Do you need to tell him to stop?
Well, because I mean,
This is not-
We can edit it out. Is it like going live right now? Do you know?
I thought that was the idea was live.
Okay.
Because they
At
said,
least-
Oh, it shows it's there.
well, I don't know.
Because I know if like you guys want to like later, he can go back.
I can't see it.
Out the parts that you guys don't need.
Neil's using the camera, right?
But I can tell him right now. Too.
If you had to leave the call, would you know how to get back in? Like, do you have a connection
Yeah, I
information?
can get back in.
You guys want to do that?
I'm gonna leave the call and then try to figure it out.
Okay.
Because everything is pushed back. I think we ended.
About a quarter till,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be calling.
Yay!
Is she?
Hey Michelle,
Who's
they
here?
wanted to know if we could
Oh, there we
hold
are.
off recording this until about 15 more minutes.
Hey, we gotcha.
Okay,
For some reason, when it started the first time, something thought it was using it. Now it's not. So now you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Just they say about like 15 more minutes. 'Cause everyone.
I assume they can hear you too.
guys align.
so can you guys hear me now?
We haven't started. There were long lines now. So
Nothing more.
okay. Actually, I guess we can hold it started. So, welcome to the 17th session that we're having today. My name is Michael Roback. I am about to be the new director at the University of St. Thomas, Minneapolis School of Law. I have been at Kansas City until the last 5 years. With me is Alexandra. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Alexandra Lee Delgado, and I'm actually from the University of Arizona, Bear Down. Same state, just different university.
And then our third presenter, who somehow got hidden, sorry. There we go. Is Faye Jones, the director of the University of Illinois. And our talk today is really just a talk, it's a conversation. To talk about the ABA Tech Show 2018 academic track and the kinds of things that might be things we could do at the track. But to explain the track, first I'm going to talk a little bit about how the track really came to be, how we started it. And then 2017 was our inaugural year. Was anybody besides us there? No?
Anyone else there?
Oh, you were.
Tech
Deborah was
show?
there. I'm sorry. And so we'll talk a little bit about what happened at the track, and then we'll kind of walk into a conversation about what might be useful at a future, at the next year's track. So when I'm at UMKC, we had funding from the Crawford Foundation to hold a law school's technology access to law and justice conference. We had 2 of these, one in 2014 and one in 2015. One of the outcomes from that was to begin a discussion about principles, or trying to articulate principles behind what it means to teach technology in law school. And from that came a conversation between Oliver Goodenough, and my dean at the time, Ellen Sooney, about going to TECHSHOW. And Oliver asked Dean Sooney, when was the last time you went to TECHSHOW? When was the last time you went to a place where there were actually practitioners doing things, talking about this stuff? And she said, I've always meant to get there. So being the good and professional staff person that I am, I immediately concluded I should create something that would get her to the dean's, or to the ABA TECHSHOW. So I had met the co-chair, or I'm sorry, the vice chair for the 2016 show, Adriana Linares, and then sent her an email and sent the then chair, Steve Best, request asking if we could develop a dean's roundtable, which is to say, have a preliminary discussion about whether or not we should have a track, an academic track, contained within the ABA TECHSHOW or as part of the ABA TECHSHOW. I guess I should back up and ask, does everybody here know what the ABA TECHSHOW is? No? Some do? Okay. So for the last 31 years, the law practice, there was a different division earlier, but the law practice management division of the ABA, or the section of the ABA, held in Chicago every March a 2.5-day event that was basically dedicated to solo and small firm practitioners. And it was aimed at technology, how to use technology in your practice, what to do with technology. And it has a very large vendor hall associated with it. So all of our good friends like Clio and MyCase and all those folks, Thomson Reuters, all attend, but they're pitching tools at active practitioners. Now, it's always been in Chicago. So the Chicago schools have always had an opportunity to attend on some level. Deborah Ginsberg, who's here from Kent, and actually Ron Stout, one of the professors at Kent, was one of the original folks who got it started back in 1986 or whenever it was. But it's grown over the years. I personally started attending when I was in practice in 1990. 1991 was the first one I attended. And then I went on and off for a number of years. And then when I came to UMKC in 2012, I went again, but this time as an academic. And actually Dan Katz and I had a long conversation at that show about how it would be really great if we could get, or find a way to get law schools and students participating in the TECHSHOW. And so conversations with Adriana happened, and I made the pitch. So for the 2016 TECHSHOW, we actually created what we called the Dean's Roundtable. In this case, the dean in question was my dean, Ellen Sooney, who facilitated a panel for a half-day discussion prior to the TECHSHOW starting. And Kent was gracious enough to host the discussion. And it had a pretty good attendance. I think we had about 40 people there. From different academics, different bar associations, different folks. And there was an awful lot of interest generated by the conversation about the idea of embedding within the TECHSHOW itself an opportunity for academics to talk about what to do, and then mixed with practitioners to figure out, well, what is, the classic question, what is it you didn't know when you graduated from law school that you needed to know when it came to technology or the business of law? And so it was so well received that we ended up doing a second edition of it in San Francisco in association with the annual meeting that following summer. So in August, we went and had a second roundtable. We added a couple of folks to the conversation. UC Hastings, Alice Armitage from UC Hastings was our host for that roundtable. The discussion was, again, equally terrific. And so Adriana Linares then committed to us to have the TECHSHOW happen. And Bob Ambrosi wrote a nice follow-up on his Above the Law post that talked about the TECHSHOW academic track. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Faye to talk a little bit about what she did. Now, I will say that I was remiss in not telling Bob. I got credit for it in his post. But it was really because of Faye. Where's Faye? Faye disappeared. Sorry, Faye.
They don't have to see me.
It was really because Faye's generosity. She had some funding that she could provide to make this happen. So the ABA Tech Show was kind enough to give us a room within the show itself, free. But then Faye was, I'll let you take it over from there, Faye, what you were able to do with the room.
Well, I'd like you and Alexander to jump in at any time because I might miss some details. But what we had planned on doing for the inaugural debut was to bring together practitioners, law school faculty, students, and leaders. And what we really wanted to do was to encourage students to get involved with TECHSHOW. And for the My Privacy and Cybersecurity Law course, we had about half of the students, actually, about half of the students came, and they said that their experience at the TECHSHOW was amazing. Two of them were graduate LLM students from China who were astounded to see in the exhibit hall all of the different vendors for law practice management online. And so they came away from it really great, with a really great experience and understanding of they were just beginning to scratch the surface of all kinds of technology for law. And so what we tried to focus on in the 2-day track itself was coming to a core curriculum of what should be taught in law schools to prepare students who have technology skills. So we began with high-tech lawyering skills for law graduates, and that was a panel of 3 practitioners, including David Rueff, who is a ABA specialist with project management. He's a lawyer in Alabama. Scott Rosenberg, who's a consultant for big law firms, and a gentleman who has developed some contract applications online. So that was our first program, what students should come out of law school knowing how to do in terms of high-tech lawyering skills. Then later in the day, we included within the track time for people to go out into other ABA Tech Show programs and also to visit the exhibit hall themselves. We reconvened to talk about teaching high-tech lawyering skills in law schools, to actually go over what law schools are doing and how they're doing it. What are they offering? And that included Nikki Perry from North Carolina Central University's Law School, Elizabeth Farrell Clifford from Florida State, and Jeanette Dykes from Vermont. And I thought that was a really great skill to sort of see what different law schools are doing with their technology. The next morning, we went into innovations in curriculum and applications of technology in law schools. And the highlight of that was to see what Darren Fox had been able to do at Oklahoma with some grant money that even included developing some artificial intelligence and some virtual reality things. So that afternoon, taking all of that information, we had a group session on what a model draft curriculum would be. And we're still really working on that as part of what we think some best practices should be through the wiki. We're working on that, but we need to get actively going again to plan for ABA Tech Show 2018 and how we can build on what was done at Chicago Kent in 2016, and then again with our Tech Show 2017. How about that, Michael? Does that cover pretty much?
It does. One thing that one other thing we did was Friday morning is we had a joint session with the incubator conference in.
That's right.
At Texas A&M. So let me ask you this: how many know about the incubator movement? What's happening there? Most people, some people. So in 2008, Fred Rooney started the first incubator. The idea of an incubator is sort of like think medical school, but not quite. A kind of residency program. There's several flavors of it, but the idea is that the law school in some way subsidized space that young graduates could go into who are going to do solo or small firm, and then provide them some mentors and some additional watering, right? Because what do law schools produce? Chia lawyers, right? It takes 2 or 3 years of watering before everybody knows what they're doing, and I say that because I was one of them. But the idea of the incubator is to create a sort of a safe space where there's additional opportunities to be to have mentors and to have training, and also to offer low bono services to the public, right? So it's seen as an access to justice solution, or a partial solution to the access to justice problem. So in 2009 there was one. UMKC, I think, had the second one in 2010. And now there are almost 80 incubators around the United States. So in a short period of time, they've jumped to this big number. And we've now had 3 conferences. There'll be a 4th conference next year. UMKC hosted one 2 years ago. The point of the incubators, though, is it's an opportunity for, again, helping folks understand how to use technology within the practice of law. So how many of you know that Thomson Reuters, as part of their LMA program, actually will, if your school has an incubator, provide the incubator Westlaw access for free? It's actually a pretty good deal. And they don't have to be, you could even probably work it so if you had a bar association that was had an incubator, you could probably make a relationship with them as well. Thompson seems committed to this mission. And of course, I'm sure most of you know that at least the most recent how many folks have looked at the drafting assistant and the other tools, Practice Central? So here's the thing, at least as far as I can see, there's no one to show people how to use this stuff, right? I mean, we've got it, but who's going to show people how to do this stuff? And, you know, or is it even any good? And I don't, if this is being recorded at this point, I'm not saying it's not good, I'm just saying, if we're going to teach students how to use these tools, part of what we have to understand is how the tools work, how they compare to each other. I just think there's this incredible space and opportunity to do that. And I think the academic track at the ABA Tech Show is a place where we could come together, talk to practitioners, talk to vendors. If you have a class that you're doing teaching technology skills in, an opportunity to have the students go to the tech show, because they get a reduced rate of like $99 to get in. And they can see the vendor hall, they can go in and listen to different sessions. It represents what I think is a really interesting opportunity. So, one of the things that came out of that was we created a law school tech wiki page. Now, Cali has one too. John Mayer created one at the Subtech conference that Roger Spalbeck hosted 2 years ago. A year ago? Time compresses. Which also was meant to try and capture what are we doing in terms of teaching technology. And so, you know, I think the interesting conversation here is, what could we do at an ABA Tech Show? Really, what do we need to do about teaching technology in law schools? I mean, I think that's at the heart of this. And what I struggle with a little bit is that a conference like Cali, which is great, I think tends to focus on educational technology, so ed tech, right? But I think what we're really talking about is tech ed, which is something different but related to and those two things are not the same, but they're closely connected. And then the other thing is, AAL, we've started a caucus on teaching technology. AALS has its new section on teaching technology. Cali is about ed tech and tech ed. We have the incubator movement that's really interested in understanding technology. We've got the new ABA Innovation Center, which is also supposed to be doing this stuff as well. We've got ILTA. How many members of ILTA are in the room? You. And then you've got the ALM Legal Tech, which is a bigger thing. It's e-discovery, but it's still part of the thing. And there are others. And so really, I think part of what our challenge is to figure out how to make all these things kind of talk to each other and then to build on them. And I turn it over to you for your part.
So you may be wondering why is a reference librarian here with directors of libraries. And I had my first legal technology conference that wasn't related to librarianship at Legal Tech West, which at the time was in LA. And having gone to library conferences and also Cali, I saw that we weren't getting the full view of the technology and the practice of law. And so I just started, because I think we all know that funding for conferences is not necessarily where it should be or where we would like it to be. I just began vicariously attending TECHSHOW through the blog posts of others, or following the annual issue of Law Practice that focus on TECHSHOW, and just trying to see that. I just was fortunate to get a free pass to TECHSHOW this year, and took that opportunity to actually see what is it that makes the different conferences that we have important, but recognizing that we can't always be every year at everything we need to be at. So my experience at TECHSHOW was just the vastness of the exhibit hall, where you're actually talking to not just the vendors, but sometimes you're actually talking to the people who are creating the platforms. And this year they had the Startup Alley, where you're seeing a lot of lawyers in practice also identifying their needs for legal marketing, for what are some of the problems that they're seeing with some of the case management platforms. So there's an innovation that's happening that you don't necessarily get to see at the other shows, and doesn't really come off in the annual Law Practice Journal or in reading the blog posts of others. So what I began to see as a participant at the TECHSHOW academic track this past March was the siloing was starting to begin. And that's when I asked you all if we could somehow get away at Cali, where we might have more people who could afford to come to Cali, who may not be aware of ABA TECHSHOW, to start talking about ways of collaborating and planning for ABA TECHSHOW 2018, so that, like, Faye is here, but she's not physically here, trying to bring in some of that knowledge so that we don't create the silos. Is that?
Yep. Because we have limited resources, right, and limited opportunities to try and all get together. But it seems like there's a kind of a trajectory. So if the TECHSHOW, which is in March, happens, so it's March. This year it's the 7th through the 10th, 2018. But my thought was sort of following around, wrapping around, is you have a Cali conference in June. You got AALL in July, typically AALS in January. And my thinking was that we could build this sort of cycle of things where each of these could build off the other to create an opportunity here at the TECHSHOW, assuming the TECHSHOW would be tied to people who are actually teaching technology or thinking about teaching technology. But that's part of the conversation, is what do we even mean by teaching technology, right? Because the way I always think of, or the way I think about it is we have this continuum. So when it's teaching tech, I often think on this end are sort of competencies. So can you use Word? Can you use Excel? Do you know what metadata is? The LTC4 kind of competencies. All the way to this end, which falls partly e-discovery and K-Cura. Do I know what that is? Can I use Catalyst, K-Cura, Autonomy, whatever it is? This very much more detailed kind of high-end. Somewhere in between here are things like coding. There's hybrid classes like the one that I've had at UMKC that we call Law, Technology, and Public Policy, where we partnered with the Code for America Brigade to create civic tech projects that allow us to work with local government and to be involved in the big, or not just the big data movement, but the smart cities movement, in which big data is a big deal. So big data is somewhere in here. So TECHSHOW seems an opportunity to be able to bring together the academics, but also the practitioners, and as importantly, the vendors, where we've got, as I was telling Alexandra Lee, a bunch of potential heroin dealers waiting for us, right? Because, for example, Clio, How many folks have got Clio and they're at clinics now, right? So they get it. They get the idea that if we start giving it away for free, but here again, just because you have Clio, it doesn't mean your clinic's using it effectively. I mean, I saw this with LexisNexis, right? They gave time matters to different clinics, and it was incredibly hard to use, incredibly hard to install. And of course, the other problem is the constraint we have with the semesters, right? So by the time somebody begins to understand something, the semester's over. So how you build a course, how you build things in a way that what's happening is that you're able to sustain the learning and actually give them a skill set when they get out. I mean, these are all, I mean, I'm not saying that there's any answers to this right here and right now. The idea is that the tech show might be a place to be able to talk about this. We can also bring together, as I say, the practitioners and the vendors.
And I also wanted, following your summation at the Saturday morning session, the tech show ended on the Saturday morning where there was a summation of how the tech show went. And practitioners were beginning to ask, where are the academics? So there was an interest from the practitioners who actually are consistently at tech show wanting to know where the academics were. And that's when they were made aware that there was just the starting of the academic track at Tech Show.
Right, because the academic track was not an official part, so it wasn't made part of the program. It was on the website. Yes?
When you say they were asking where are the academics, what did they want the academics for? Or what did they expect from the academics?
I think they wanted, I think the person who was raising the question was, why aren't we seeing more new attorneys here, or more law students here, or actually having the presence of those who are training the next group of practitioners. So I think the person who raised the question was unaware that the track was just starting up, but it was raised in plenary. Why aren't we seeing more academics here?
And I think in part what they're also looking for is they want young lawyers with the skill sets that include technology skills. They don't want someone to come in who doesn't really understand how to create a PDF document. If you're going to e-file, do e-filing. You've left metadata. I mean, these are sort of classic problems that actually you sort of would think that somewhere in law school there'd be some exposure to it at least, so you have a sense of what you should do in practice. That's why A2J Author is, I think, still a really interesting potential in the space of document assembly and other things. But the whole point is we don't have...
Another point I might add, and I think another point is when we weren't in the academic track sessions, we were actually in sessions with the rest of Tech Show. And there were things being demonstrated with the technology that practitioners were amazed by. And I think there was a sense of, why did it take so long for me in my practice to get these tools? Are future attorneys coming out with these tools so that they can be more efficient? I think efficiency was a huge theme at Tech Show this year.
And the other thing that's a theme that has run through some of these other conferences is this notion of the access to justice problem, and that technology is seen as the key to helping with that. So A2J Author is seen as a potential solution, in part, to help self-represented litigants. I mean, I'm coming from a place, KC, where 70% of our reference traffic is pro se. And we have that because there's no public law library in Jackson County, Missouri. And so the courts explicitly send the pro ses to our library, which actually is a potentially great learning opportunity. It's actually more of a pain, because the truth is, and we know this from the stats we keep at the reference desk, 60% of the people showing up are looking for forms they need to fill out. And A2J Author was built to be that kind of a thing. The problem is that it requires a little bit of a dose and a little bit of navigation sometimes. Even with the simplest form, there still may be additional questions. So, I mean, there are still lots of opportunities. So instead of talking so much, I'm going to throw it out and ask, what do you think about the idea generally, and what kinds of things are happening in terms of trying to teach technology to different schools that are represented? Yes?
I find it to be a rub in a way with technology because even like the Westlaw programs we have, the majority of our students are not going to be able to use those in private practice because of the cost. And I almost feel like we're doing them a disservice if we get them to rely on those and then they go out and practice and they can't use those and they're not sure how to make that work. Like, I mean, when they're looking at cases and they're doing the background studies, that program for Westlaw is almost $10,000 a month. I don't know many law firms that can afford it.
Okay. And I think that's great. I mean, my first instinct to respond is that actually what we should not be teaching is a tool,
Right.
but what the tool represents. Yes, ma'am.
So we also, this comes up to Chicago Cat Law, we also want to make sure they have those tech foundations. By foundations, I mean the foundations. We walk in and they all think they know Westlaw because they can bold and they can spell check, but they don't know like how to put together a table of authorities.
We need Word.
In Word.
That's right. I think you said Westlaw.
Did I say Westlaw? Someone said Westlaw. You could do a table of authorities with Westlaw, but you have to have that whole other thing. But there is a tool. But yeah, so they need those foundations in Word, those foundations in Excel, those foundations, the thing about how do you upload a PDF that's free of metadata and has been redacted properly. All those things that do affect everyone day to day that is within the cost of, a reasonable cost for any lawyer to have, so that then they can go to the next level. And the other thing is we want them to, because this is now part of 27 states now have the ethics requirement for technology, you want them to be able to be competent in technology and continue to be competent in technology and have that expectation that it doesn't stop. You also don't want to like have technology be like over there. It's that thing that you learn separately. It's got to be integrated. So we don't have a separate course on these foundations. Instead, we go to the classes that could use it. Like, all right, you're teaching business work, we'll talk about Excel. Legal writing, we'll go into every single legal writing course and talk about basic word skills. And that's how we integrate it. It's not that we don't have some high concept. Like you were talking about, oh, well, the high concept is discovery. I'm like, what about R? Which is what Dan Katz is teaching his students. I'm like, okay. When they get super high concepts, we've got things for that. But for those day-to-day foundational things, we've got to be continually integrating it. We've got to be talking about how we do that and what works and what doesn't. Because without those, efficiency doesn't go, it is nowhere.
Right. And that's what I mean is so it goes from sort of one end to the other and you have to build on things. I mean, you can drop people into this space over here. You did take an e-discovery. How many have e-discovery courses at their school? Okay. And how many of those have labs associated with it? So they're using some kind of tool to learn about e-discovery. Some. So yeah, so that's the other thing. There's nobody who owns this space exactly. Dan Katz is more of a doctrinal faculty member than most. But I personally feel strongly that for law librarians to persevere in the 21st century, that this is a right opportunity for us. I think some administrators get that, some not so much. The truth is, too, with things like e-discovery, it's really hard to do that as a doctrinal faculty member. That's where you need adjuncts who are in the trenches. We happen to have the Hush Blackwell's National E-Discovery Leader Teach Art course. And I think that makes a difference. So the problem is, we're in territory where I don't think in any way, shape, or form resembles what legal education has always kind of looked like. Or at least not what it looked like when I was
Michael, can I jump in?
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to pull together some strains of what both Alexander and Michael said. The exhibit hall is really huge, and each year at TECHSHOW it's grown, and that's why this coming TECHSHOW will be at the Hyatt where we had the ALL convention last year, because they've outgrown the space at the Hilton. And what I think that TECHSHOW offers most is an opportunity to see what's happening, and it has applications to all of law practice, from a sole practitioner, right up to a huge firm. For places where we think that we don't have the resources to teach students, I met two women who were from Pennsylvania who did family law work. They came to TECHSHOW to learn how to run their sole practice virtually. And each of them had, they don't have an office, they don't have a secretary, they do everything through their computer. And I think those are the kinds of skills that we should be thinking about teaching our students. But I also think that when I mentioned best practices, every school is going to need to craft a curriculum that meets its students' needs where they're going to be working. But I think we can learn a lot, and as a group, take advantage of that opportunity that Michael mentioned. There are lots of times when innovations are not going to happen in law schools outside of people who have an interest in innovation. And lots of times I think that really is the law librarians, the clinicians, and other people like that. If we have doctrinal faculty that we can work with or adjuncts that we can work with, we should take every opportunity to do that. In terms of how to get students to TECHSHOW, I'd like to push for TECHSHOW suspending a registration fee, since it's only $99 anyway. If they could drop that for a year and just do a test to see how many students could come, then we might appeal to the vendors, because it is such a growing base, to provide some scholarships for students so that they could attend. My students can go because it's only 2 hours from my law school. Chicago law students can go, but we need to find other ways to get more young lawyers and students who are about to become lawyers at TECHSHOW, I think.
As long as they stop doing it during spring break.
Well, they've now changed it from years
Yeah, that's
ago.
earlier,
Yeah.
so it won't be during.
Some people want it in spring break though, because it makes it easier to.
I know, our students just, they're gone.
There was a question over here. Just imagining. Hopefully, subtech though, Roger, I guess, could you talk a little bit about that? Because on some level, the idea of teaching substantive technology stuff has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And I guess part of it is how are we missing getting it started or generated? I mean, I know it's happening, but it just seems so sort of start and stop and.
Well, it seems that there's like a narrative that there's a little here, there's a little here, there's a little here. I like your idea of the cycle of things. My one sort of concern with that might be, are we just going to keep saying the same message over and over? Or how might we, knowing that each of those things has sort of a different audience, think about the role we would play in each of those areas? Like, I think going to TECHSHOW, I'm really sad that I missed it, but I think going to the TECHSHOW, a big thing there is, like Faye is saying, getting our students there, because a lot of TECHSHOW stuff is smaller law versus like legal tech in New York, so that's where a lot of my students go to practice. I think that's great. But I also think is us selling ourselves to those people to know that we're making these connections and developing things, because there's the practice ready stuff that Thomson Reuters is doing. They're driving that conversation, which I don't really like. We should be thinking about 3 years out when our LMAs end. Are we just going to be like, yeah, we got that, we'll keep it? Or have we had conversations at TECHSHOW where we've gone to people saying, give us the tools that help us teach the specific things we want so that our students can get there and they'll see your thing instead of somebody else's thing.
The other thing we have right now is we have real stories from real students. So like I said, while it was during spring break, Emily Barney was able to encourage a student that she knew to go, and that student was like the hit of the show. So suddenly, like, oh, that's me. So, you know, all these tech startup leaders are talking to her, they're taking her to dinner. She, thought that her legal career was going to go one direction, now she wants to do legal tech as her career. It was transformative. I've had her talk to a bunch of students too about her experience, and then suddenly those students were interested in going, now that they knew that one of their fellow students had gotten a lot out of it. So bringing, right now it's just us in the conversation, but bringing students into this conversation really does change the dynamic of getting students interested. I love the idea, by the way, of making it free for a year, because that would take away that barrier, and I think that would go a long way to bringing students who could come in for like one day, but couldn't commit to the whole conference.
Well, my pitch to the ABA too was like, in this sense, you're the heroin dealers, right? So if you want people for your division, you need to get them as a student, get them hooked on what they're seeing, and they'll be
And they already made the participation in the ABA free. Also, there's puppies, and this is really important.
There are puppies in there. A happy lawyer has the puppies.
Yeah, Happy Lawyers has the puppies, and they all got adopted, and so like that becomes like this one. Don't underestimate the power of the puppies, I'm telling you.
So much of our talk is echoing the keynote speaker. Puppies,
Yeah, I pointed that out.
I just want to be mindful of the time because
Yeah.
I know that there's a 1 o'clock session, but we just wanted to make this, raise awareness of TECHSHOW and that there seems to be a place for us to have conversations without getting into that cycle of repetition.
Yeah,
Right.
but and part of it's evolutionary. So
Right.
it may look like
It is.
repetition, but it's just growing in things.
But knowing that not everyone is participating in all of the conferences, but trying to avoid the silos that could be created in this process with the different audiences and the different participations of academic track.
And the Teaching Technology Caucus is going to have a session, I forget which day it is, it'll be advertised to have this conversation. So thank you all for attending. Hopefully people will think about going to TECHSHOW next year. We are not, at this moment, we are not completely guaranteed the academic track. So the more I can tell them that we generated an amazing amount of buzz in Cali about the TECHSHOW. Buzz. We have about 20 some people here, so I think that shows us a serious sign of interest. But as Roger says, it's going to be an evolutionary thing. For me, for Alexandra Lee,